Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so we gotta talk about this topic, and I warn you, it's probably gonna be a little bit controversial. I mean, the core component of this conversation is the Israel-Gaza situation, and so of course, as we know, with certain people, no matter what you say, you can't win. But really, I don't really want to talk about the Israel-Gaza conflict. Rather, I want to focus on Douglas Murray and his behavior during his appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast. You know, I've always believed that if I'm going to do a show like this, I have to have intellectual integrity. You know, sure, what I do is editorial, it's opinion, but just because I'm presenting my biased viewpoints, well, it doesn't mean that I have to turn a blind eye when something happens closer to my side of the ideological spectrum. I think that's absolute cowardice, it's tribalism, and I'm not interested in playing that game. I've said this before, I personally don't subscribe to the idea of rigid political sides. I rather focus on the ideas, focus on the individuals. And so this idea that just because somebody is perceived as being on my side or closer to my political ideology doesn't mean that I have to give them a pass every single time. And this whole notion that you can't go after anybody who's closer to your side on the ideological debate because it's infighting or it's hurting the cause or dividing your side, I think that's total nonsense. That's cult-like behavior. And that, of course, brings us to Douglas Murray, who, just like I said, I agree with on many things. He's a sharp, articulate guy, and he's been a valuable voice in pushing back against the leftist insanity. But the behavior that he engaged in on Joe Rogan's podcast, I'm just going to say it, I thought it was unacceptable. It reeked of the very same elitist, censorious behavior that pushed me away from the left in the first place, that created all the distrust and disdain for the mainstream media and their dishonest gaslighting practices. And so we got to call out this behavior. Let me show you guys exactly what happened. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so if you missed the Joe Rogan podcast, well, let me tell you, you don't really have to watch the whole thing, because, well, this is kind of the summary.
Interested in your selection of guests, because you're like the world's number one podcast. So.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think about it that way. I just think I'd like to talk to this person.
If you're going to interview historians of the conflict, or historians in general, why would you get somebody like Ian Carroll? There's been a tilt in the conversation, in both conversations, in the last couple of years, and it's largely to do with people who have appointed themselves experts, who are not experts.
You mean like Ian? I don't think he appoints himself an expert in anything.
Who's that other dude who thinks he's an expert on Churchill?
Daryl Cooper does not think he's an expert.
When he was offered to debate the current greatest living biographer of Churchill, he said, I can't, because he knows much more than me, and I admire his work and I've learned from it, but I can't possibly debate him.
Right, but you don't have to be able to debate people to have opinions.
No, you don't have to debate people.
If it's not your thing.
You're saying people that I've had conversations with have downplayed the Holocaust?
This.
Well, who are the two guys?
I just told you, Cooper and the other
Ian Carroll.
Carroll.
I've never podcasted with Ian Carroll. I have podcasted with Daryl Cooper once. And he absolutely did not downplay any of the Nazi atrocities at all.
Do you decide to go, hey, what else have we been lied to? Maybe Churchill wasn't a great guy. Maybe Hitler wasn't such a bad guy. Maybe the Holocaust, etc., etc.
Nobody is saying that. No one is saying maybe Hitler wasn't such a bad guy.
You are saying that.
No
if you're
one's saying
saying
that.
that in the 90s, if I'd have been running the British Empire in 1939, I'd have known exactly how to do it, and I'd have known how to hold the whole thing together, and I'd have kept Stalin back, and he'd have been great at Yalta, and... Like, this is...
But I don't think anybody's saying that.
Yeah,
You say, I'm not a historian, but I'm going to spend my time talking about history. I'm not a journalist, but I'm going to spend my time talking about this thing. I'm not an expert on this, but I'm going to spend my time talking about this thing. It's a weird move, yeah?
No.
This is the problem, Joe. I mean, if somebody
Wait a minute,
says...
you have to claim to be an expert on something to have an opinion on something?
It's a bit weird to be simultaneously saying, I'm not an expert on a conflict, and talking about it everywhere.
I don't think so. Not really. Yeah. Huh. I mean, I don't know. I don't think like...
I don't know.
I don't see how you
can't have an opinion about these things?
Which things?
All these things that we're talking about.
Some of them, yeah.
Are you an expert?
I am on some, yes.
On some,
but
you're
talking about some that you're not an expert on.
Hang on, you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I think this is a non-argument. I don't understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a non-argument if you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, about the provisions going into Gaza or not, if you've never seen any of this going on.
That basically sums up the whole podcast. We've got Dave Smith, a libertarian, a comedian, a frequent critic of Israel's actions in Gaza, sitting down across from Douglas Murray, who, of course, as we know, Murray is one of the most vocal defenders and supporters of Israel. And instead of bringing the audience an engaging debate, a point-for-point discussion, a focus on the ideas, we got anything but. What we instead got was Douglas Murray, for the most part, refusing to engage and just continuously making this appeal to authority argument, dismissing Dave and all these other characters and even going after Joe Rogan, claiming that he's platforming people who are not qualified to talk about these issues. He's not an expert. He's not a historian. He hasn't been there. Therefore, his opinion has no value. Joe Rogan, you should be ashamed of yourself for even platforming these people. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? It's the exact same elitist media tier argument that we've heard for years. Trust the experts. You don't have credentials. Don't do your own research. You can't think for yourself. It's the exact same kind of argument that they used to shut down dissenting views during the pandemic, or on climate, or gender, or war. And now we're watching Douglas Murray essentially run the same script. Well, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, I don't care who you are, or how much of an anti-woke folk hero you are. You don't get a pass for that kind of gaslighting. The idea that you need to be an expert to have a valid opinion, in my view, is flat out anti-intellectual. And to see someone like Douglas Murray, who everyone's going on and on about how much of an impressive intellectual he is, frankly, I found it baffling. And it's got me thinking about Galileo. I mean, at the time, he wasn't an expert, right? By the church's standards. They said he was crazy, that he didn't know what he was talking about. But guess what? He was right. Revolutionary ideas often come from outsiders. And at the end of the day, debate is not about credentials. It's about arguments, evidence, logic, doing research, and having the ability to think critically and formulate arguments and positions. I absolutely despise this appeal to authority nonsense. You don't have a degree, therefore you can't speak. Sit down, peasant, and let the experts take the stage. It's totally antithetical to the whole notion of free speech and dialogue. And honestly, I think Douglas Murray knows this because, well, just a few years ago, he was making the exact same argument. Take a look at this clip, which is currently going viral all across social media, that's making him look, frankly, like a complete hypocrite.
Have you been to the crossing points?
I really resent that form of argumentation.
When were you last there at all?
Sure. I really resent it.
You should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
This is not an attractive invitation.
I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something.
I have the right to talk about whatever the hell I want. And no one's going to stop me or try to intimidate me. And I think that if I said to somebody else the other way around, it would be equally reprehensible.
I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
If I said, shut up, you have no right to criticize anything that Douglas Murray says because...
Hang on, you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. It's not an exact comparison, but seriously, is that a reasonable form of argument? No. In that case, nobody can talk about anything. We might as well pack up, go home, and isolate ourselves.
If you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, if you've never seen any of this going on.
I mean, there are some people who've written about the Holocaust who didn't experience the Holocaust and have written about it better than people who did.
But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit whilst developing all of these views about it.
This idea that the lived experience has to triumph over everything else is not always correct.
Should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region.
So there's an irony to this, but let's skate over the irony.
Back then, Douglas Murray was calling out censorship, defending open debate, saying it's dangerous to shut people down for having different views, or not having been somewhere, or having the requisite title. But now he's on Joe Rogan's podcast, gaslighting people and playing gatekeeper for who is and isn't allowed to be part of the conversation or have an opinion relating to the Israel-Gaza conflict. Absolute hypocrisy. And again, this isn't even about Israel and Palestine or the specifics of that conflict. This is about free speech. It's about open debate. It's about not becoming the very thing that we're supposed to oppose. You don't have to agree with Dave Smith. You don't have to agree with Douglas Murray. But at the end of the day, we have to agree that people are entitled to their viewpoints, and shutting down people's opinions and views from a point of elitism and authority is just wrong. Debate the ideas, stick to the facts. Otherwise, frankly, you come off like a complete shill that's attempting to shut down dissent. You come off, honestly, like a total propagandist. Dave Smith is entitled to his viewpoints, and he's certainly entitled to his platform, the platform that he built. From what I can gather, he seems to be making his arguments in good faith, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And so if he's engaging in good faith, well, the proper thing to do is to reciprocate. If you have issues with the things that he says, with the points that he makes, then stick to that, stick to the ideas. Anything else is elitist behavior that I want nothing to do with, and I will personally never defend. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.